Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is Dr. Ajay Prabhakar, a true polymath, often called the Da Vinci of modern times. He is an internationally renowned change agent, author and consultant with over 21 years of experience across more than 30 countries. He has worked with United Nations over a decade. Dr. Prabhakar is also a prolific author of 6 acclaimed research, innovation, and leadership-centric books, including the Graham Code series, which has a forward from former president of Nigeria. As a sought-after speaker and thought leader, Dr. Prabhakar shares his experience in innovation and leadership, emerging technologies, skill transformation, and change management. But we will start with something which everyone loves to talk, which is his research work. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the Sunny Shah Show. Today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Prabhakar. Thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome, and it's great to be on the show.
Likewise, we are thrilled to have you. We have a very interesting topic today, and I'm sure our audience is going to love it. AI is everywhere.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, but it is going to transform a lot of industries for good and forever. Archaeology as a segment is not hidden away from AI as well.
That's correct.
And with your vast experience of being known as the modern day Da Vinci, with your vast experience around archaeology, and of course, the technology side of yours, this makes this conversation very interesting. Unveiling the unknown by embracing the technology is what we are going to learn from your perspective. And I'm very excited to know more about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But before we get there, Dr. Prabhakar, you work exhaustively both on the archaeological side and the technology side.
Right.
You're a veteran on both sides. What first sparkled this interest of blending ancient history with modern innovation?
First of all, as I said, it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me here. It's a great place. And well, coming to the question, thank you also for the wonderful introduction. I am humbled. Coming back to the question, I remember this story, and I would say it like a story. I remember this journey we have had in Calabar. Calabar is a state in Nigeria. And what happened was, it was almost towards evening. We had almost done about 10 hours of journey on road. And then we were journeying further to our research site. It was almost around that 5, 6, towards 4:35, 6 in the evening. And I remember we had gone into this semi-forest area, and we had this site. And we got down from the cars, the respective cars, and we went towards the site. Our teammates and our villagers were there to explore that site. We all went to that place. And then, going through the vegetation onto the site, it was a circle which was there in almost the center of the forest, semi-forest. And we went onto the site, and there was this huge stone, which had fallen on its face, or so it looked. It was almost like 4.5, 5 feet, I remember.
Okay.
And the villagers helped to pick up the stone. The stone was like Shivlinga here, Shivling, like what we have here. So it was like a U-shaped stone. And the villagers, I remember even very distinctly, clearly, how they picked up the stone, and the face turned on to me. The face of the stone was a scream.
A scream.
The mouth of the stone was wide open, as if you are screaming.
Wow.
And the face hit me because it was a very animated figure.
So you just unearth it and you find, okay, that's a screaming face looking at
that's the screaming face coming onto my face.
Right.
So that was the first thing which hit me on my face. And it was a thing which I can still, I have goosebumps as I talk to you, because it's a face which never leaves me. So that was my first instance of meeting a monolith.
Wow.
So, and the face still stays with me. So coming on to the question as to why, I do what I do, or how I started blending technology with various different fields, but not only archaeology, but all other fields that I work with. The first reason was what I cited just now, the call, you know. So when I saw not only that, when I have worked extensively in Africa, various different parts of Africa. So when it's like a child, uh, just like a child who gets a toy and he wants to place that toy in every different environment,
Right.
in a house first, outside, maybe on a car, maybe inside a Jeep. So that was the kind of thing which I had. I was pretty young then, and it's 20 years of writing my first research book. This is the 20th year. So it's an amazing time to be on this show again. So 20 years of writing my first research book. So I was pretty young then, and I wanted to really make an impact.
Mhm.
And technology was such a provider, enabler, a tool which could do so many things. And it's only amplified much more now. So when I saw that figure, it was a call, as if it was calling out to me to say, help me, I need your help. So, and not only, and that figure is just an enabler, as I say, for many such projects in Africa, when I could use this wonderful tool that I had even then and now of technology to help,
Right.
to serve, to change. So this is something which I still carry today. So wherever I feel that technology can be helpful in changing,
Right.
and I was blessed to do that project. So that's that. So it's like a tool which changes, which equalizes, which brings about a revolution. So I see technology as a tool there, and that's the precise reason, in banks, in commercial spaces, in leadership roles, everyone uses technology. But what about technology being used in such spaces? So that was a call out to me. And I think that's the starting point, or that was the start of me using technology in such spaces.
It's very interesting. I think your field is very interesting. That combination
Thank you.
of archaeology
Yes,
and
it
technology.
is.
It's almost like you are constantly decoding the
Yes.
past.
Yes.
Which leads to my next question. We as humans have always been extremely curious about our past ancient civilizations and the mysteries around it. I also believe, and I'm sure you've been a veteran technologist, would agree to this when I say that we are at the cusp of our peak when it comes to technological advancements. Human being as a race has never been so advanced technologically where we stand today. Why do you still see that some of those ancient mysteries, despite of the fact that we advanced so much technologically, still remain unsolved?
um, I, when you say this, I'm reminded of a puzzle, uh, a puzzle box, which time keeps rattling.
Mhm.
So every time, like, time picks up these puzzles which belong to one piece, and it rattles and throws it back.
Right.
So some pieces fly away, some pieces remain, some pieces turn upside down, some pieces go some other place. So every time an archaeologist picks up all these pieces, it's a new set of things, new set of rules, new set of everything. So for every scenario, what happens is, whether it's an excavation or decoding of ancient texts, or putting together artifacts, or regenerating a particular context, all of these scenarios, like, there are many pieces which are lost.
Mhm.
Lost because of time, lost because of the process, or the toll that time takes, lost because of the environment, lost also because someone did not want you to see those pieces.
So they are deliberately lost?
Yes. So examples would be like treasures which were there for kings in Egypt, which were supposed to be taken by kings and not by tomb robbers who would invade and steal those pieces. So it could be that, or it could be information which only the ancients felt the chosen ones, or the ones who were eligible for that kind of a knowledge should be partaking that knowledge. So it could be documents like that. Examples again would be like, I would take some from India this time. Maybe like temple constructions.
Right.
So it's not everyone who wanted to construct a temple. I'm not talking about now, like whoever wants to, do it anyway, they do it. But I'm talking about ancient times wherein like construction of temples had a particular way of doing it. So it was not everyone and anyone. Even till date, there are only certain, if you could call it certain people. It could be associated with a group of people. It could be a family,
Right.
who are given this art, and it goes from one
Generation.
to another. That is generation
sense.
to generation. That's correct. So it's not like anyone and everyone who wants to want to build a temple. I just want to build a. It's an art, and it's a scientific, mathematical, geometrical art form which is combined with architecture, and then it's rolled out. So what I'm trying to say is, so these art forms or knowledge would not be given to anyone and everyone. So that's one more part of it.
Yeah.
There are other aspects of it, like, we had bodies of knowledge, colleges. So whether it's Alexandria or whether it's Nalanda, these bodies were destroyed, pillaged, burnt over time for whatever reasons, like whether it was conquests or whether it was just personal, aggrandizement, or I don't know what. Like, so these bodies were, it's also, I feel it was also more of identity. Many of those statues you would see, you will always see their noses missing, most or many. It was just to remove the identity of that person, because just like how we say in Hindi, naak kat gaya. It means like you lose your identity, or you're giving away your identity. So I believe academic centers were also part of that erosion, as in like annihilation,
Right.
to remove the identity there. So that was also another part of the thing. Again, also, as we are talking about erosion, most of these material were written, of course, the generations later realized that this would not be the trend. But also we had many of these material written on very fragile material, papyrus, wood, which would not stand the, walk of time, really. So as time passed, these materials, even today, like palm leaves, again, of course, you can treat it. But again, if those people, the ancients, treated it, so many of our records are lost this way. So it's really unfortunate. So these are all different ways. And then if the mix is not already heady enough, we already have places which are blocked by different governments, wherein you can't go. I believe as much as protection of these sites are important, we need to also do it in a very regulated, defined manner, the excavation, the study of such sites, because otherwise we would never know what has passed. And I believe basically the past is important for the future.
Right.
So without our past, it's like a rear view glass, as you're driving, want to change lanes, you always look up at the rear view or the side glass, So without these glasses or mirrors, you wouldn't or you can't make that transition. So any adjustments, we need these, we need to learn from our ancients. And this is the only way that we learn. So I feel like these are all, even here, coming back to India, most of our, stuff which were written on palm leaves or, fragile, even paper for that matter, we have a very different kind of environment here, where it doesn't allow these materials I've been fortunate to be working in archives as well, where we do preservation and conservation of these materials. So they don't survive here. Why? Because the environment here is humid.
Right.
It doesn't allow the material to survive. It needs a drier, kind of an environment to survive. So these are all the challenges. Then pillaging what we are very good at, pillaging, destroying, our race is very good at that, destroying, really bringing down elements for whatever reasons, or writing 𝗷𝗆 𝗣𝗍𝗍, or, spoiling, making caricatures, what we have, again, these are all different reasons,
Right.
why, like, we've not been able to put or get things together. But we have a good ally now as we talked AI. It's going to be of great help. We've already started, in many areas, we've started seeing some very good results. Even like natural disasters, that's also another. We had I was looking at a project that in the Vesuvius mountain, the volcanic eruption, the volcano came down and it eroded and it trapped many artifacts under it till a very recent excavation, and they were taken up, and the scrolls were like, it was all put together, and the ash and the molten lava had gone over it and destroyed it. But how AI was able to build it up, rebuild or unscroll and read it. So many interesting things happening in different parts of the world with technology. And that's where, like, I believe AI is a great enabler.
Great. This gets interesting, Dr. Ajay, because
Thank you.
with every void, for whatever reasons, right, whether it was human self-destruction, trying to wipe a race from the history of mankind, to natural phenomenon, whatever it could be,
Yes.
the fact that there is a void increases the human curiosity.
Yes.
And while you briefly mentioned about how people like you are leading this change of using the next gen technologies like AI to fill that void, to get into a predictive analysis or creating those kind of algorithms or data points, almost taking us back thousands of years and unveiling the unknown. I want to know more about it. And how is AI going to transform this whole window of getting into the past and unlocking and decoding those unknown territories and knowing more about the human mankind and our ancient civilizations?
Sweet spot, as I would say. I would like to start with my own project. When we were working with the monoliths. So the monoliths were called, I'll just briefly mention about the monoliths before I take off into the technological part. The monoliths were called 𝗷𝗆 and 𝗃𝗃, or like 𝗃𝗃, very close. And the village where, again, they, I'll just briefly go into the project because it's very enticing for me. So there were different villages. Alok is one of the villages. Again, if you would see all three words that I mentioned, they're very close to our own language here. 𝗃𝗆 means one who's always there.
Right.
He's like a rock, doesn't move. That's what monoliths are. They are rocks who doesn't move. They're stable. Correct. They stay there. 𝗃𝗃, 𝗃𝗃, 𝗃𝗃. The W can be substituted. Linguistics. I'm also part of a linguistics team. So again, the word, so 𝗃𝗃 is basically aspiration. I want to be craving. So craving for what? But why or what would a stone crave for? So this is also a very a question, a sinister question, if I could say, which led me thinking as to what basically could be the reason, or why the reason, like basically these stones are there. How can I solve? So we take off from that part. Interestingly, again, these stones are 365 in number, approximately. Again, 360, 365 in number. Again, number of days meeting up with those numbers. They are placed in 30 odd different villages.
Interesting.
They are a circle of stones, 8, 6, 8, 10 in number, and they stand in a circle always. And they open their mouth. Most of them have their mouths open. And as if they are communicating with each other. Now, when such a scenario, and you need to understand what is the context.
Right.
Now, it doesn't stop there. It's very mysterious and it's very interesting because Alok is ultimate bliss or ultimate happiness or happiness in short. So, the ancients, did they have a 3D kind of a library wherein and each of them, each of those villages have different meanings. So if I am reading the meaning of these stones, it says that I'm craving for happiness, Akansha Alok. So I'm reading it from the Indian context.
Right.
So does that mean that if I need happiness, I go to this village and see the stones which are in a circle? Is there a cryptic codified message there which says, this is what you need for happiness, for bliss, for harmony in your life? So these are questions which I started with. And I said, these are very interesting questions because this is the premise of our, research, because this is what pulled me in. And to come back to your question, there were many symbols on there. So we needed to read. Our story is very peculiar because we had to travel those research sites, which were, as I said, almost from the base camp itself, we had to travel about 5-6 hours, go into these sites, study. And that time we did not have mobile phones. So even camera, as in camera of the mobile phones, we couldn't take pictures. We had mobile phones, but they did not have cameras. So what that means, that's 20 years before this time. And we need to gather those Kodak or Sony, cameras where you click pictures, battery is down, it doesn't work. Sometimes the camera doesn't even come on. If you carry back, you go all the way back 15 hours and then you realize the film was not set properly or the images did not come out clearly. There are so many variables. It was stress. And talk less about the journey. The journey itself was the roads were not good.
Interesting.
And somewhere there'll be a hand like this,
almost like asking you to stop.
Yes, a soldier or an armed robber could stop you in the way and ask you what you had. You could be pressed. So all these challenges, and you had to reach the site, and the sites themselves were not in easy places. So it was not an easy, aspect, communicating or getting these images from the site onto our base labs or research labs back in Abuja or in Calabar. So we needed to find, so it was not as if I wanted to just get an AI and I got it. That was not the idea. I mean, there was a definite, desperate need to get AI into the picture. Then I would like to call what we started with as Crude AI, because we are using if and then conditionals to read, and OCR, of course, to read basic data on the thing. So our need was basically, we needed to have these images analyzed, to read these images, whether they made any sense. So what we did was we got together databases of different languages, Indian languages, other languages, here Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, Sanskrit, of course. So we got these databases and we would compare different patterns on these images with these languages. So that was our premise. What I'm trying to come on to is basically how technology made it so easy. If this same work we had to do it, it would take years. But with technology, even with that crude technology, crude AI, as I call it now, because AI today is zillions of years away from what we started. But it was basically image reading. Yeah. Computer vision aspect of it that we started doing. So it basically used to read those images and compare it with databases. It was a very simple, so-called simple application. But those times, again, it was way ahead.
What times are we talking about?
We are talking at somewhere around 2007, 2006. That is the time when we, developed.
Started.
Yes.
Right.
We already had did some initial study before, but 2006 onwards is when we started, because it was a process and it was really taking a toll. People were falling sick, going these places. It was not easy. People were getting robbed. We were getting stopped. We couldn't have access. So there were so many challenges. So what I'm trying to come on to is basically AI is just a game changer when it comes to this. Today, AI, let's say if you have to do the same project again today, we could study the context first. The most important thing is, and I always believe as a, if you could, use the word archaeologist or a technologist, I would say the first premise of getting into any place is to have the context of the place. Really, why are we using this,
Right.
or why are we doing this project? The why is very important. So if you're doing that project now, I would say today, like I can build a context, how and where the village is, how the stones are placed, whether it makes a lot of sense. Even then we had used a satellite view and we had seen that the stones, as I said, there are 30 different sites. They formed a spiral.
Cumulatively.
Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 30 making a spiral. So if I have to see, coming back again, if I have to use AI, one, I can regenerate. I can recreate these images using AI. I don't have to take pictures again. I can use one image, say extrapolate it, and have multiple images which are, similar to this image. I can make like if I want to have a face, a human being out of it, I can do that. I can generate a face out of, through or using AI. I can have a face to see how a human being who was depicted on a stone would have looked, then and now. I can use languages which are there on the stone. I can do it like this today, like as I'm comparing, and like I don't have to like put in lots of code.
So decoding becomes a lot more easy.
Absolutely. So the thing with AI is it is a master. It's a master with big data. It's hungry for data. It's a hungry organism. It needs data, in fact. So, and that's the best. This is the best part of, AI. So like when we have field like archaeology, wherein like we have tons and tons of data, which human beings to go through would be a pain. It won't be humanly possible.
Right.
So this is where it would be a savior, wherein it comes in and looks at this data and says, see, we have a pattern here.
Interesting.
We can do this here. We can do that here. It'll come up with, probabilities. It'll come up with suggestions of those, how much probable this would be.
Right.
Like how you talk about, predictive analysis. So it comes up just like how it would, reckon a market, or it would see a market, is how it would see a language here. How close is this to a language, maybe a language like Sanskrit? How close is this to a language like Tamil? So it would give you probabilities. It'll also give you what is the error. It'll also give you context. When was this language there? What is the kind of material that this stone is made up of? What is the degradation cycle? What can be done to preserve it?
Right.
These are all, even transcribing it. There are so many things, project management, everything, in fact. So what would require possibly eons of years to do a project like that would be maybe done in a decade or even less for that matter. So that is the power of AI. And so, as I said, like it can be used in so many ways to construct, like if it is a architectural site, today there are many sites wherein like everything is, raised down, whether by time, man, or, different circumstances, natural calamities. So we can rebuild the whole scenario.
Right.
We could also see like, how and what caused certain things, So all this can be done with AI today, just, as not as simple as it sounds, but again, much simpler than how we used to do it before.
I've been reading and watching things around, as an example, of how technology has been embraced in archaeological sites. The city of Dwarka, the original city that currently is under the sea,
Yes.
was recently recreated.
Yes.
So it's quite powerful. And I'm sure Dr. Ajay would agree that this is one of the most powerful weapon in your armory as an
Yes.
archaeologist as well as a technologist.
Yes.
And that also magnifies the ambition of our pursuit to decode the unknown, right?
Yes.
A lot of ancient civilizations, including ours, we firmly believe on extraterrestrial matters or beings from the stars, as we would call them today. And we often find them as myths because we don't have scientific validation or historical data to prove it otherwise. But I firmly believe that the fact that it transcends across so many civilizations, it's far from just a myth. Do you think AI has the power to decode that finally?
You put me in a tricky situation again. This is one question which keeps propping up, in various discussions we have, whether online, offline, or even in podcasts. Well, I would say extraterrestrials, and I know our viewers won't like it if I said it's possible, because that's one word they hate from me, that it's possible. But I would still say it's possible, and the reason being very important is that there are laws, and I would like to cite some of them. There are laws. Okay, let's start from home. And there are laws or stories here which talk about, gods from heavens.
Correct.
We have Indra, we have Varun. There are a whole pantheon of gods who are there in the heaven. 𝗍𝗵, as they call it, heavens to be, easily identifiable. So we have, where is 𝗍𝗵? Let's look at it like from a scientific perspective. Where is 𝗍𝗵? Is it a upper portion of land, or is it in the skies? Because whenever we see depictions in our movies or whether in serials, they have clouds going here and there, and then Indra Dev is sitting in there enjoying his whatever. And then, so there are, where is this place?
Right.
So Varun, again, lightning, so lightning cannot be on land. It has to be somewhere in the sky.
Correct.
So that's us. Now, again, I'll just not, and this is also what I like. I like to pull it out and go on to other places wherein we have seen different sightings. So one, we also have Sumerian stories. We have one of the oldest or older, I would say, stories that we have is of Nibiru. It's a Sumerian tale. And they talk about how there is a star called Nibiru, which has a very long elliptical orbit around Earth. So I think it's around 3,600 years that it will come again closer to Earth. So it is claimed that beings from there came and they formulated human beings because they wanted workers. So people say industrial age is when we started working and becoming slaves. I would say like so many years, or at least the stories talk about so many years before, wherein like Anunnaki, they came, two brothers, Enlil and Enki came, and these are all postulations, or these are all stories which are there, just like our own. Our own, I wouldn't say it's mythology. Our own is basically grounded. Many places we have spots and places, but these are also texts which are there with other cultures.
Right.
So I would say these can also not be discounted. How would people think about beings coming from outside? If you really like think about human beings as people who are watching the stars, going about their chores, like maybe even, agriculture came much later. These were like cavemen.
Right.
How can they even think about things like people from outside? They would rather say they came from another land.
Correct.
Somewhere nearby, close. How would you say something from the sky came in? And that were beings, and they brought this. Now, there's also, now I'll come in a little from archaeological point of view, which I find it mysterious and I keep raising it. There are different points in time. And we have, we have a span of time in millions of years wherein we were cavemen, we were going around the whole world. And then suddenly something snapped in us almost 12,000 years ago, 12 to 14,000 years ago. We suddenly realized that we can do agriculture, right? We can domesticate animals. We can slowly, we can come up with metals. We can do, so that's much later. But again, what happened that we took millions of years just to realize that, you can plant seeds, you can grow plants, you can keep animals. How did this happen? I keep raising these questions. Why? Because not that I want everyone, I want everyone here to think basically that why is it that a particular point of time, the human being in us snaps and says we can do all these things. Did it take so much of millions of years for us to evolve from that stage to understand that we could plant seeds? Because we are seeing plants, we are seeing trees every day. Why doesn't it occur that we can have these plants in our backyard?
Yeah, well, why was it an Eureka movement at every stage?
Why? Did someone teach us? 12,000 years, and we see we have been accelerating from that time.
Right.
In 12,000 years, we are in an age which is called as the information age.
Correct.
Wherein we have not only amplified our bodies with machines, we can take now strengths, we can bring down entire buildings. One single man in a machine can bring down an entire building, a building like structures, big structures, one person. So we have amplified our muscles, we have amplified our bodies. And now so from the body level, we have gone on to the mind level, wherein we are amplifying now our minds, our thoughts, which is a classic example of what AI is doing. And beyond now, we go one more step higher, which AI is trying to grasp and reach, reasoning. So from the body level, wherein we amplified using industrial age, we built in machines which could accelerate our production capacity, way we do things, step it up to such a level that humanly it would never be possible. Making cars as if it were, packing things. So from there to amplifying our thoughts now, right, which is happening now, we are at this stage, which lasted, the information age has just lasted, I would say, centuries, just a century in fact. And now coming on, industrial age has lasted, centuries. And now you come on to information age, which is even shorter, which is just decades, in fact. Computers have just come in now.
Right.
And we are already ready for another. So how is it possible that millions of years, thousands of years, hundreds of years,
and decades.
Evolution is getting faster and faster. But what took us the first million years? I mean, what happened the first million years?
Is there a snowball effect?
Well, you could put it that way. But was it a prompt or a nudge?
Right.
We're still talking about extraterrestrials.
Correct.
So that's one more way of looking at it. I don't have answers, but these are documents. If you were to use this as documents, these are documents which are available in different cultures, including our own. We talk about Pushpak Vimanas, which I've talked earlier. You cannot discount it. You cannot say, how could a person so early in time think about a Vimana? Even our temples are called Vimanas.
Yes.
And if you would see, they are placed in a way that they're ready to fly. What did that mean? That it was a source to reach the above? Or was it the philosophy that if you would enter a temple, you would be, rocketed to another zone, or you would become enlightened?
Right.
Was that the message? These are all questions because they're called Vimanas. And if you would see a tapering, nose of a plane, and if you would compare it to a temple, the shape is the same. So how? So that's another question. Then we also have Gilgamesh. That's again another story which I like citing. So Gilgamesh is again 1/3, human and 2/3 God. We talk about his adventures. Then we have Enkidu, who's created, to counter him, who is also sent by the gods. That was an era where gods used to like tinkering with human beings. So anything which is not okay, the gods will come up with their own thing. Like even in our own
countermeasure.
Yeah,
Almost like a chessboard.
Yes. So again, we have stories like that, wherein like gods are there. So who are these gods? Who are these gods who are making, measuring, countering, like how you said? So these are questions again. Also, another wonderful example would be, and I could go on, like there are so many. Another example would be the Tassili caves, Algeria. We have some very fantastic paintings there. Now, you could always say that those cave paintings, some people are wearing round helmets. So many years ago, who would think of a helmet, first of all? And that too, a round helmet with somewhat antenna looking like things on top. Or a kind of a spaceship, like a kind of a thing which is in the air. Who would think of it? Now, these are questions which, and I have seen so many. I mean, these are all which are out in the public sphere. I have seen so many instances of, and I like to think of myself as a scientific person, as a technological person. So I would like to stay in the sphere of science, not pseudoscience, but science. So I have seen so many instances wherein like it doesn't add up. So how would you explain? So this, whether we were nudged by beings from outside, is a question which I don't have answers to, but there are so many answers in different formats.
Do you think we are close to finding an answer now with this technological advancement?
We could create, the best we could do is we could recreate instances,
right,
of what has happened before. We could draw conclusions or infer, but I think it'll stop there. We could also collate it with data from space, the data that we have now from space. And I think that's where we would close. And it'll give a good idea of, where we lie or we lay. So it would give us a good idea. But beyond that, I believe there is a lot more which has to be studied. There are a lot many jigsaw puzzles pieces which are still missing. So until we have all that, but it's fascinating. If it was really science fiction that they wrote, it was amazing imagination, I would say. But was it really science fiction? I don't have the answers, but I would really believe that there is an element which we there are so many elements which we don't understand in this world.
right.
So I would like to keep, and I always keep saying this, keep an open mind. As a researcher, our jobs should not be to say, this is it, and nothing beyond it. Our job should be to say, there is a world beyond this. There is a world, it's a door to another world. And that's what we should always, and AI teaches us that we should always be learners. We should always, and we will be always learners. In fact, the generation who's born today will always be learners. So that's what I say that I would say that's what I could answer, or I would answer to that question.
I got a straight but tricky question for you.
Yes, please.
Being a learned man who'll always put his head over his heart and having technology at your play and being a researcher almost all your life, does the inner voice of Dr. Ajay Prabhakar firmly believe that our ancient beliefs, I'm not talking religion, I'm not talking Sanatan Dharma, I'm talking about ancient civilizations, right? Are you more affirmed towards believing in those ideologies and those stories, as we call it? Or are you more inclined towards the myth side of it, the fact that they were a myth?
When I started, I said that calling it a mythology would be incorrect, because I strongly believe that it has been part of a story. It's story. It's a story which has been passed on. We never had video. We never had, moving images in TVs, in televisions, or on YouTube, wherein our ancients could see, right, stories. So these stories were their stories when they had to lift themselves, hold themselves in calamity, in atrocities, when things were not going in the right direction, right? Maybe it could be the story for a child to fight. So, or a child who has to live up to certain, standards, beliefs, values. So I believe these were the stories which were used to inspire the generations which came in. So I believe they are stories of what happened. As a person, and personally, I believe they happened. So as much as I research, I have a very, I would say, compartments. So whenever I get a particular aspect, I try to validate it as much as possible with science. But I also know there are certain elements, and so many elements, in fact, which are beyond science. People before used to call it magic, then they used to call it witchcraft, but there are elements which are beyond science. And that's what goes back again to what I said just a few minutes before, that our being of a scientific temper, we should have that in mind, that we don't write it away as witchcraft or magic, right? We should be able to study, use tools like AI and study it more so that it brings or it comes onto the realm of science. So I would say, like, what's happening at different sites, like whether it's Dwarka or other sites which are there, we need to study more so that when, we are questioned, and we will be questioned, and
Right.
that's a fair process. So when we are questioned, and when these stories we feel, or they say how it doesn't add up, so we should be able to provide justifications in a manner which is science, which is a way of looking at things that they understand. That we numerify, if I could use that word, those things, bring it into the realm of science. That should be our effort as researchers, as people, who are working in all these different domains.
I often wonder, and hence this question, do you believe that our ancient civilization had better technology, better knowledge than what we currently have as modern human beings?
So this is again another favorite question which comes along again and again. I believe most of us would have played games,
Right.
computer games, especially city simulations and stuff like that. So when we have simulations, when we are given a parcel of land, and then we explore parts around it. We explore. So as we play, the thing becomes more visible. Otherwise, it's all dark.
Right.
And then we start exploring places, and then more things become visible.
Correct.
Now, if we have to have humanity again, let's say if someone presses the reset button and we start all over again, we would never ever follow this path. There are so many different probabilities, because click of a button, click of weather, change of, a way a mountain was, a
Right.
path was, and things change. So there are 100 million, zillion, billion possibilities from the way we are, it could have been so many different possibilities. So what we are today is just one instance.
Right.
So human beings could have taken so many various different ways to reach wherever they would reach. I mean, what I'm trying to say is we would never have this instance in a parallel universe.
I hear you.
So there are so many, it could be there, but possibility or probability says that it is 1 in a billion zillion. Because there are so many different possibilities. Because again, even for us to have this podcast, I need to meet you first.
Correct.
Right? Or for that matter, if you would have been born in another country, or we would never meet. I mean, there are so many different possibilities. You would never be born. I would never be born in another world. So what I'm trying to say is, what we know of as science today is our one instance or of one version of that possibility. What I'm trying to say is our knowledge of what we define as science is just what we have learned along this journey. But if we were not going to take this journey, or if we had taken another journey, our version of science would be absolutely different.
I hear you. Talking parallel universes here.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is, again, if our culture, if by what we say, if we had ancestors who valued, let's say, environment, and let's say if our culture used to say, or if we had a governing culture which said, if you build products, they cannot go away from sustainability. Or if we had things, even let's say metal, it cannot be beyond this. So if a body would have regulated that, our science would be very different. We wouldn't try certain things. It's also culture.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is basically like we have so many different instances of science, versions of science, which were possible. So let's say if we don't even consider parallel universes, let's come back to our ancient cultures. Let's see them as subsets of this, universe.
Right.
So we had a set of values wherein like they had to follow that, and they used to have tools, not necessarily how we use tools today, So then we would have a different branch of science. And that is where I'm coming from. So maybe they use their minds more in a very different way. So we talk about how Vimanas were there again, coming back to Vimanas, how thing flew up in the air, how when something was recited, the thing would come down, how you could do certain things with the Vimana. Maybe the power of the word was more powerful. Like here we talk about mixtures, having the right mixture, maybe the right kind of words, right kind of energies. Voice sound is also a form of energy. So again, using energies in a particular manner, which will power machines. So that science is in a very different, or maybe it's in a different space, which we are not able to comprehend. Like, let's say if you talk about Bluetooth and AI to a person of that time, let's say a person from that time would come now, say, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So it's absolutely different sciences. So what I'm trying to say is maybe those sciences were more in a different direction. So they knew of things which we don't know, of which we've forgotten.
And vice versa would also have been
absolutely true. So this is a possibility.
Right.
This is absolutely possible that the ancients of before knew or did things like, in a very different fashion, which makes it now like, how did they do that? How is it humanly possible? But it's just technique. It's just tools. It's just science for them. So, yes. So we even have like texts wherein like we talk about how different ammunitions or missiles could be made. But if you would see the matra or the units are very different. And they talk about like ingredients. Ingredients are very different because those ingredients are not even available now. So you don't know the composition. You don't know how much to mix of what, to create that kind of a thing. There are various texts. I'm just trying to say, if you could scientifically analyze and get that to today's juncture and try to recreate those things. We don't know of elements. So we don't know of that knowledge. So that's what makes it difficult, I would say.
Another interesting aspect, and I'm sure this question has been thrown at you obtain number of times, but to address my audience curiosity, I'll ask it once again, nonetheless. A lot of us grew up with fascination about the mega structure called pyramids in today's time. Most of us are either restricted to Egyptian documentaries. Some of us have been blessed to be in and around those pyramids.
Right.
as tourists, very few people have been in your shoes, especially very few Indians have actually been there, done that when it comes to actually entering a pyramid.
Yes.
And to me, you are the first person that I've met in person who's actually been inside a pyramid. And I'm curious to know, what was that experience like? And my follow-on question to that is, do you think this mega structure was man-made, or do you think there was an external energy that laid the foundations of this mega structures that stand in Egypt today?
Well, as you, I mean, when you started the question, you said it all, that this is one question which keeps, getting back at me and being thrown at me. First of all, I was so fascinated, when I even heard about the first time I remember, I heard about the pyramids, I mean, it's such a mammoth structure, and the fact that it is so old again. When I first entered, it was a mix, as I would say. It's a mix of so many things, but it's also wisdom. It's also royalty. It's also like message, like the same feeling that I had when I saw the monolith. It's someone from the past telling me that there is so much more to learn. There is so much more to understand. I mean, this is not I also get, when I see a pyramid, I also get this message that the life we live maybe is not the life it is, So I also get duality, as in, because I see so many things which make sense in a different plane. So coming back to the question again, the first question was definitely how I felt. So wisdom, royalty in all its grandiose, to bring together such a mammoth structure, massive structure. When you stand in front of it, that's when you see, and I say this, and I keep using this as a case study whenever I talk to students. I say, this is one thing which, when people come together, can do. Collaboration. When we talk about collaboration, this is a project, which cannot be done with a small group of people. People have to come together, and think of it with all the JCPs, or the excavators, or the different tools that we have today. It is still a feat to do something that manner. So again, there are multiple theories, I would say, which have been floating. One is, you could have used elevations or ramps, which will go around the pyramid. Makes sense. At least to me, yes, it makes sense again. The second would have been to create kind of a canal, use the water of the Nile.
That's one of the theories.
Yes. To float it. Makes sense again. It makes all the sense, because the flow would propel it. All the effort of carrying it, let's say, it's not easy.
The historical flow of River Nile is assumed to be nearer to where the pyramid stands today.
Yes, but again, using that flow
to your advantage.
Yeah, correct. And, because it's not all the time that you'll have the same flow. So using it to your advantage. Now that's something. So you could have artificial means of putting it. Now this is science again, right? Using it to your advantage. How do you use the waves and the wind to your advantage? Because you need that in any construction. Wind, whether it's facades, putting glass facades, you need to know the wind, because as you go higher, you need to be really watchful. So even at that height, to get a stone up there, not an easy task. So if you're using water, or if you're using ramp, if you're using ramps, yes, it makes your process definitely easier. But again, there is still, it's an uphill climb again in all senses. So again, so that's one thing.
Yeah.
From, again, since it's all tempered around AI, if you're using AI again, you could come up with various possibilities, probabilities of all these instances coming in. And you could see what best would have happened with percentages. This is what AI can do. But you need a lot of data, which is missing again.
Right.
There's a lot of data missing. So we need to get all those things in place before we can actually model and we can say, okay, this is what could have happened. But for me, again, a nudge there from outside, as in extraterrestrials, again, I would leave the door open.
You won't discard that.
It is a possibility. They have this, and again, many of those stories which we have, I'm sure, I mean, if you are a keen follower of Egyptologies, you could call it that. There is this assumption that it is, aligned towards the star Sirius. No. Why? I mean, why would they do that? Or is it us who's thinking that way? It also is, connected with pi 3.14.
Interesting.
It is also connected with the Fibonacci sequence, which is also the number which decides the spiral arrangement and leaves the shell, the natural equation or sequence, as they call it.
The shape itself, the geometric significance of a pyramid.
Yes. So how people with no scales, no numbers
Managed to do that.
It's a question. So either the guys were extremely good, or maybe we had help.
Interesting. Moving to another very important aspect of your career and your life, and a very important topic of discussion. I'm talking about environmental sustainability now.
Oh boy.
You've been a consultant all your life to numerous governments as well as private bodies across the globe. With that experience that you carry, which is global in nature, do you believe that AI has the power to help us from environmental sustainability standpoint? Because it's heartbreaking to see the number of national calamities these days, whether it's wildfires, to tsunamis, to floods, you name it, right?
Yes.
Do you think technology has a play there? And you being in the shoes of a consultant, can you tell us more about your work in that space, how you're helping these organizations and governments and a larger good for human beings from that standpoint?
Some alarming numbers I would like to highlight. The first number that which is like very alarming, is we are wiping out forests. We are wiping out 25 million acres of forest every year.
25 million acres
of forest
every year.
Very
Wow.
sweetly. So, this is something which is really alarming. The second number that we have is we have about 100 species of animals, plants, or birds that we are again removing off the table every year. This is us, me, you, everyone. 2.2 billion people will, again, lack good water. We take it for granted, all these things. When I'm talking in schools, talking in universities, they don't seem to understand what's so great about not having, good, clean water. When you have been to the other side, which I have been, and I've seen the lack of water, there are some places, and I won't like to name those places, wherein Coke is cheaper than water. Coke is cheaper than, a jar of fuel, So water is more expensive than fuel, some places. So most of the time, like, we are using Coke for things which, I'm not promoting Coke here, I should be saying that. So what I'm trying to say is some of these resources are not available in certain places. And it's a commodity, really. Water is really a commodity. There are certain places where they are forced to drink from streams, or places wherein, like, water is not readily available. I was fortunate enough to be working with USAID through United Nations. I also worked with USAID on. We started with a project which talked about how technology, and that time crude AI can also be used in agriculture to help farmers know what is the correct time to plant, uh, seeds, or when would be a good time to have proper germination of seeds, or what are the proper crops for this kind of a soil. Um, there are certain other things that we are doing. Again, we are really warming up, as we know, and this is common. Like, we are warming up our planet faster with whatever we are doing. Unfortunately, AI is also another block in that, because for large LLMs, we will still need a lot of power.
Right.
But my prayer is, and our effort should be to offset that with so many good things being done, that we can justify that additional processing,
Right.
that additional energy that we are drawing from nature. Having said that, so what are the different things that we can do with AI? AI can really help, predict, as we have discussed before, whether it's tsunamis or earthquakes. So it can help predict, taking data from before, and it can predict fairly, 73 to maybe 90% fairly, when the next event could or would happen. So that's a great help which we could use
Right.
AI for again. How this was difficult is we had tons of data. And as I said, like AI is always information or data hungry. So, I mean, need meets, the supply. So when you getting data from all of this, whether it is census data, so it can predict what best can be done for people, even metropolis management, like let's say city management.
Right.
So when you're setting up smart cities, you can learn from cities data. All kinds of data can be fed into a model, and then it could give you data wherein, like, how best to lay roads, how best to have water treatment facilities, how best to have transportation, how best to have health centers, how best to place different, amenities to which other places, how best to have industrial parks. So all these different things, even before setting up a place. So one, we talked about, number one is like uh, things which are beyond us control. That is tornadoes, earthquakes, calamities in general. Second is we come on to planning, when we talk about urban planning, so that, we plan our places better. So we have cities which come in, they are better planned than how we just, put things together and we got a city. Third is to have like materials. How well would it be like when you're driving on a road and you bump into something, the road cracks, but the road heals up
On its own.
on its own. Like potholes, they just disappear in the next 10, 15 minutes. How well would that be? Or you have wonderful, beautiful buildings and they detect that there is seepage, or there is leakage, and they, heal themselves.
Right.
So that there is no more, because water is a bad enemy of construction again. So, or for that matter, any building material. So concrete, which heals, or elements which are closer to nature, building elements which are closer to nature, which supplement or augment nature rather than bring it down, like what we have today, whether it's glass or whether it's cement or whether it's concrete. They just add to the load of whatever. Even for, why I'm saying this is, even for the creation of it,
Right.
you need energy. And generally, as we know, today, all the energy that we have, 80%, we have been talking 20, 25 years of renewable energy and energy from the green and solar energy and wind energy. 80% of still what we have in the world is still coming from fossil fuels. So it's just 10% renewable energy in all these years again.
It's a great opportunity.
So I'm saying there is great demand to develop such material,
Right.
because we as humans would find it difficult to research into all these different aspects which a model could easily research and come up with. So there's a great opportunity there to come up with materials like that. research more into like let's say whether it's batteries, whether it's renewable sort, like energies which are closer to nature,
Right.
which give back, whether it's hydrogen, all these elements which can give back to nature. When you are doing low cost housing, and I'm sure you must have also experienced, every one of our viewers must have experienced. It's like this, when you're choosing a school for your child, you do all the research, ICSE, and I talk specifically with respect to Indian, the Indian context. So we have all the international boards, you research everything, and the next best thing to do is go and put the child in the nearest school that you. So what I'm trying to draw at is like contractors, when they're doing, a project, what they do is they research, they get whether, for the real reasons or for other reasons, they get 3 contracts. They try to validate, justify, cost cutting. They try to get things together and build a project.
Right.
But maybe that's not the best way to build a project. Maybe for that particular terrain, there are certain things which are better. Heat, maybe. You use different materials, like when you're building in a cold terrain and when you're building it in a place where it's like, in Africa, let's say, where it's really hot, you don't use the same material. Maybe such material, you could use maybe foldable solar roofs, or things which will augment the energy of the house. Again, we could use lighter material. Again, we could use like things which don't catch fire.
Right.
And these a contractor or a procurement manager wouldn't know, because not everyone knows everything. Now, this is where AI could come in and say, at this price or even a lower price, we can get this. So why not go in for that, which will be better for the nature, better for the human staying inside, better for the environment, better for win. Even for economics, for that matter.
That's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to create a win-win.
Absolutely. So what we're trying to, like having trees, we also talk about reverse engineering agriculture, having barren lands and making them agriable,
right?
Making them, growing something on them. Now, we don't know all the answers. No human being does. We could have a database, but this could be very limited and could be like always what has been time tested, It doesn't mean it's the final answer. Now, this is where AI could come in and say, why don't you try these, right? Which could be a better option for the soil there, for the water table there. And it would be beneficial even for having local agriculture or local, food stuff for the local populace, So again, it's a win-win-win-win, So we need to have these win-win-win-win situations wherein like it's good for everything. And this is where AI can really boost,
Makes sense.
So
your experience working with so many government bodies, Fortune 500 companies, as well as private players, when you're trying to push AI and ensuring that they adapt to AI into their operations, do you see any or do you face any challenges in doing so?
Wonderful question again. This is something which we face again and again and again and again and again. So challenges, there are so many challenges that we have because it's, first of all, it depends on where or how AI is viewed. AI is generally viewed as an animal which is out of control by some. Now, some view it as an animal which can be like one animal fits or caters to all the solutions, like you plug and play and that's it, done. So these are all. The most important I would like to highlight is culture.
Why is that?
It's like this, I have many examples come to my mind. So I am choosing I'm also choosing which one to come up with. I would say it's like this, like when we talk about the culture, we are all, as businesses all over the world, we are still used to a particular cycle. a slow cycle. And we are like that hamster which goes round and round and round. We're okay with that. Now, suddenly, now we don't realize it, but time, circumstance, and the conditions around, the wheel has been made bigger, but we are still at that pace. So it goes slower. What I'm trying to say is the era now is now. Consumers want more,
Right.
And they want it now. Instances like changes are happening much faster.
Correct.
Gone are the days where it could just have a marketing campaign and relax. We need to monitor. There are so many channels. There are so many. I mean, before we just had a television channel, you could put up an ad there, Times of India or, a newspaper wherein you could have put an ad there and it's done. But today, the number of social media channels itself are so many, platforms are so many, you cannot just afford to have one and relax. So that's just one aspect of it. Talk about like how the consumer is treated, returns, complaints,
Right.
servicing. There are so many. So even if there is one product, there are so many different aspects or faces that faces a consumer.
Interesting.
So now, like how if you are still stuck in a age wherein like you do one thing and you are okay with it and you don't service or take care of the so many other things, your competition will bite you. Or there'll be products which will take the ball away from you. So we need to look at as a business. So what happens is basically we are so used to as a organization, and it's the story of with many organizations. We're so used to just walking. But the pace has turned, we need to step. It's not even now taking care of the things that come. Now we need to forecast. We need to be ahead of the game. In fact, we need to know what's going to happen in 5, 10, at least have a fair idea.
Right.
And this is where AI can really come in. So if you're going to, but having just a software on your desk and it throwing out probabilities is not going to help if you're not going to act. So, and that act can only come if the culture changes. So that is where we need to act first. So, if the culture is the same as just taking a report today and working on it and, easing off, no, it's not going to work. So we need to have a culture which will be in the AI mode. So that is a first step. Not only you as a CXO, but every other person in your management and going down to the last customer-facing executives. Everyone has to be agile. The word is agile. The word is adaptable. The word is in line with change. And that can only happen if the culture changes. So that is my bigger challenge. I have a list of challenges that I can go on, but I think I'll hold. So these are some of the things that as I said, like these are the things that, culture is one thing which I face. We as human beings, as much as we say change is this, change, we should be changing. Change is the only constant. These are common, marketing or management books. We keep throwing this across. But the challenge is change is constant. That's fine. But we need to adapt to that change.
Correct.
Human beings are not known to adapt to change easily. Every day we are so okay with, doing our jobs. Anything new, we see it as a threat. We see it, and it could be, well, for all what's happening, it could be, if it challenges the role that I'm doing, or if it is going to add the responsibilities on my plate, or it is going to push me into another zone which I'm not okay with, or take away my job, a change is never welcome. So these are things which we need to educate, talk to people who we are, getting in contact with. And that's one thing which comes on like hard for me. Yes.
Interesting. Let's talk about the ethical and philosophical aspect. Do you think AI has the power to bring science and spirituality together?
Oh boy. Oh yeah. Spirituality, huh? It's deep. It's deep. Um, when we talk about spirituality, well, I'll change seats here. I would also like to know, what do you mean by spirituality?
Spirituality to me is my belief, which transcends from my ethnicity, my race. It could be a culture that I inherit. It could be religion. But I would like to define it as a belief system or ideologies, set of ideologies that we usually inculcate from our ancestors. That's spirituality to me.
Okay, great. So I would also say, and this is common, spirituality is also, or is basically something associated beyond you, something higher.
Correct.
Because also spirituality means different to different people. I've talked to so many people about spirituality. Everyone has a different view. So it's great, and it's in line with what I think is also spiritual. Now, coming on to the question proper, like when you talk about spirituality and how it can go beyond. So there are so many questions. There are so many questions wherein we have very little answers to. What is death? It's a very
Don't
it's the question which we don't understand. Is death, and I take it because this is one question which keeps coming back in various forms, from various different aspects, from various different parts of the world, from very close quarters as well. Is death really what is life really? What is that thing which goes away when we die?
Right.
Because all our parts are within the body. What is that thing which goes away? Science has no answer yet. So is technology or AI going to help us understand that more? Maybe few steps more. Or I'd like to again come up with another important thing: consciousness. How do we know that my toe is itching?
Right.
What tells us that? What is that feeling? How do I know that? How do I know, the word is know, that my toe is itching, or I'm not comfortable, or I'm sitting slacking, or I'm seeing very well, or I have to communicate this? What tells me that? Can we define that medically? No. So what is consciousness? Can machines have consciousness? Or let's look at it another way. What is the we all know operating systems, like, whether it is Windows or whether it is, or Apple, all of them have their operating system. What are the human operating system? How do we know, the eyes are apps, the ears are apps, the nose apps.
So what's the software behind this hardware
Yes.
that keeps it going, right?
How or what? Now, as a technology person, I would say this is intriguing for me. What is that operating system which controls, which knows, which heals, which reproduces, which gives birth? Amazing. So that's something which is beyond, really. So, and I feel with AI, we'll be able to know more of ourselves first, because that is the start. When we have to know beyond us, when we have to even think about space, the first frontier is us.
Is us.
When we understand ourselves first, that is the first step to understand the world, or the first stair to understand what is beyond us or what is bigger than us. So that, I feel, AI would definitely help understanding what is our brain, what is consciousness, what is us, what is that spark of life really. This is a fundamental question. So these are things, when we understand, then when we know what we are made of more, we will be able to answer questions beyond us. Because one question which keeps haunting, whether it's a CXO or whether it's anyone, like, is that, what is it that I'm doing in this world? Okay, money, cars, this, that. Yes. What we are beyond this, what is beyond this?
Right.
We have it all, but again, the quest never ends. It's like the hamster's wheel again.
Very
We
true.
keep going. We keep going. You get the best of cars. You get the best of industries, the best here, the best there. But what next? Here's the question, which leads then to that emptiness again. So I believe the spirituality aspect of any human being is to try to satiate or trying to get some answers again. It's not everything, but at least something to at least heal or fill that vacuum. So I believe with AI, that space would be more. When we have more answers to ourselves, we would also understand like feelings, emotions like love. We also, because now we are trying to just put a value to all this.
Very true.
So with that, we'll be able to understand. I still use the word understand it more rather than just put a value to it. So that's my take on spirituality and AI coming together to understand spirituality.
Let's talk future. Where do you see, how are you envisioning AI transforming everything around us and the way we look at it?
It's getting frenzier, I would say. As I would say, like, we started with the cave age. We came on to the agricultural age. We came on to the industrial age. Now
Right.
we are in the information age. Again, threshold of another new era. I would call it a new era, wherein like we are going to transform something which is going to go beyond our minds, which is going to go beyond our mind level. We've amplified our minds. We have gone on to the next level, wherein like we are trying to understand reasoning. So I can think of various possibilities. Again, if you don't do, you also talked about the ethical aspect of it.
Right.
If you're not serious or if you're not able to like handle AI very well, there's also a possibility, again, as I use the word possibility again, wherein like AI could take the upper hand because it would have more intelligence, because it's grouped intelligence. It'll draw its power from the various resources that we have provided, and will use that intelligence to govern our world. In that scenario, and this is a futuristic, I know it's even like a sci-fi scenario, but it's a possibility again. It could happen that it takes over and would say, humans, you're just a race. You're just one species. So be in your place.
Right.
So it would give equal opportunities, because it's again an algorithm. It's again a set of rules. So it would say, be in your place and you're okay. Like if you try to trespass or, if you try to get out of that space, you would be governed by laws. AI could do that because, since it is a set of rules, it also brings us to another, and this is a challenge also, which I have since we are talking about it. We have just entered the last 10, 20, 30, 25, 30 years. We have just entered into an era wherein we are going away from bureaucracy. It's not gone. It's not even like it's shifted, I would say. Wherein companies are earnestly trying to go away from bureaucracy because it hinders, because it breeds corruption. Now, bureaucracy is again a set pattern, set of rules. AI is also a set of rules. So we are just going from one phase. Are we going from one phase to another phase? We shouldn't do that. There's also a concern which comes to my mind. The exciting parts, everyone talks about it, That's the reason why I started with the negative aspects of what could happen.
Right.
So this is one possibility, because the human element, and that is the reason why we should not allow that. The human element is so critical.
Understood.
So if you go on from bureaucracy, which is a set of rules, regulations, and go on to another like AI crazy, it's not going to be good for us. It's just another set of rules. The human element, as I said, AI you can never have, we talked about challenges. AI cannot and should not replace humans. It should always augment
And balance.
and balance. Absolutely.
Very, very interesting narrative.
Yes. So it should always be able to augment that balance. Always in this, because we have this notion that it's like a charger, just plug it in and it's done. No, it's never done. And even if such a scenario arises, it will not be the best. I remember, I remember, I wouldn't like to name the organization that I worked with. This was like 20 years, almost 15, 20 years ago, when one of the ERPs, I wouldn't like to name them again, it's a big giant, ERPs had come in, and I was working with them. So, and the client or the person I was working with wanted to implement that ERP.
Right.
The person thought that would be the end of all the problems. To implement it, I remember it was and those times it was 2.5 GB hard disk. Hard disks were just small, 2 GB, 2.5 GB hard disk. So many servers. It was a hellish experience just to even get it installed. And then to make it work was another thing. Okay, work is fine. To implement proper is another headache altogether.
Yeah.
Now, this is something which could happen to AI as well. If you don't understand why or what is the reason why you want to implement AI,
it can go haywire.
It can go haywire. The ROIs, anyway, you'll miss. The whole business could go the other way if you're not careful and if you don't know what you're getting into. Start small. So these are things which I feel are also alarm bells which one should remember. So this is the instant. So again, when we are talking about coming back to what we're discussing, we cannot allow AI to take more than 35%. 65, 35. 65 humans, 35 AI. This should be the proportion.
Again, talking about the balance.
Balance.
Interesting. So you almost gave us a playbook for AI. So thank you very much for that. I feel this has been quite enlightening, Dr. Prabhakar. I feel we touched upon some aspects which are very critical, right from decoding the ancient civilizations to understanding the myths, and if they were actually a myth, to testing the spirituality and bringing it close to science, applying logic to everything that we know today. And most importantly, sustainability, to take care of the Mother Earth, as we call it, which all of us are responsible for.
Absolutely.
I think we are truly blessed and honored to have individuals like you who dedicated your lives in this field. And I firmly believe that it is because of such contributions that is going to create future leaders that hopefully will be more aligned to sustainability, will be more open to adopting technologies to bring in human transformation, not just for human beings, but for all the species that live around us. And hopefully cleaner water, better air, and a greater planet that all of us can coexist in. So what you are doing is remarkable, and we are blessed that you happen to be an Indian.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you would be a proud citizen, and you'd continue to do so for our motherland and for the rest of the world.
Thank you.
It has been my pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
And I wish you all the best with all of your endeavors. For our audience, guys, if you want to get in touch with Dr. Prabhakar, his details would be in the description below. And hey, if you're not following us yet, or if you're not subscribed to our channel, please press the bell icon so that we can always be in touch during the next episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Ajay. Again, a pleasure having you on the show today, and I wish you all the best.